Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Great conversation today. We've got Danny Fingeroth, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things. First of all, I wanted to get Danny's reaction to the Spider-Man clone conspiracy, given that we now know Ben Reill is the bad guy, and Danny has a long history with Ben Reill, of course, as the editor and one of the writers during the clone conspiracy. So it's good to get Danny's point of view on that. And also other things. We talk about a couple projects he has in store for 2017. Danny has been programming the Wizard conventions and doing a lot of the comic book programming as far as panels are concerned. And he's going to be working on Wizard New Orleans, moderating a very interesting seminar that Howard Chaykin has regarding design. We get the details from Danny on that. And, of course, Wizard is in the news in terms of little transition of power, and the Seamus at least Stephen Seamus, is ruffling feathers. So I wondered if Danny had a point of view of that, and I felt obligated to ask him about that. So hear what Danny has to say regarding the controversy. And we also just talk about a lot of other interesting things. We review the year for movies and talk about superhero films in general, and I give him my point of view. I just think Danny's one of the guys that has really been analyzing superhero character on, a very big level, like his book, Superman on the Couch. I always like these kinds of word balloons where, he's plugging a couple things that he's got coming up, but really it's just a chance to just talk nerd with one of the nerd experts, Danny Fingeroth, for today's Word Balloon. It's brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your support. Can't thank you enough because you help keep Word Balloon going and make it possible for me to go to conventions, update equipment, and make the product as good as it can be with subscriptions from you. So it's not necessary. As I always say, Word Balloon will always be free. But if you really enjoy the show and you want to help the cause and can, consider this. The average comic book is $3.99, even $4.99. Word Balloon gives you, many hours beyond what it takes to read the average comic book. Is it worth your while? Can you spare the price of a comic book and support Word Balloon in that way? If so, go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad there, or go to patreon.com/wordballoon. Word Balloon is also brought to you by InStock Trades at instocktrades.com. And I was looking around and found a lot of Danny Fingeroth product. Things like the West Coast Avengers premiere hardcover set, Sins Past. That volume is 45% off. It's $19.24. You can get Darkhawk Classic, written by Danny Fingeroth, drawn by Mike Manley, 45% off. It's $13.74. How to Create Comics from Script to Print, including the writing of Danny Fingeroth on that, 70% off, just $4.18. And reach back for the Deadly Foes of Spider-Man trade paperback, written by Danny Fingeroth, 45% off, $13.74. Just a few of the items you can find at instocktrades.com. Don't forget, if your orders are $50 or more, you'll receive free shipping, and this time of year, it's kind of perfect. So do yourself a favor and start shopping now at instocktrades.com. All right, without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Danny Fingeroth, now on Word Balloon. Danny Fingeroth, welcome back to Word Balloon. I'm happy to have you back, and you got some neat projects coming up for 2017.
Well, thanks for having me back. I had a lot of fun last time, and I fully expect to this time as well.
There we go. Oh, man. All right, pressure's on. No, I got good feedback, too. People seem to enjoy our conversation. Here, I'm going to get this out of the way just because.
Me too.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, man. Last week,
people just out of the blue would say to me, "I heard that interview on Word Balloon. It was great." So wonderful. It's fine with me.
Excellent. Well, thank you, listeners, because that means a lot, and it always is nice when the guests hear that. So thank you. I got to ask you because obviously he's back. He came back last week. I don't know if you've been keeping tabs on the clone conspiracy of Spider-Man.
I've heard that he's back. I haven't read it yet, but it is quite ironic that this is like the second or third major clone storyline that Marvel has done in like the past few years. So there must be something about clones and hopefully about some of the stories that we did when I was editing the books that people responded to, even though it gets its share of ridicule. People keep coming back for more.
No, but as Marvel themselves said in the press conference, and it's true. I'm sure you encounter a lot of Ben Reill fans, and I think there is always excitement when it looks like there's going to be a solid Ben Reill story, and Slott is certainly a great Spider-Man writer.
Yeah, well, I mean, people, even back then, people liked the story. Some,
Sure.
It got, a few people sort of dug their teeth into it, and, I mean, I'm probably the last time I was on, I gave you my theory about it sort of being, symbolic of sort of a nervous breakdown of the whole comics industry.
Yes.
That it sort of became a lightning rod for everybody to, focus their anxiety and fears on, but. The fact is that those, the clone stories, lifted Spider-Man sales, which were pretty good anyway. But I mean, at a time when everything else was going down, the Spider-Man sales were heading up. So, look, as I always say, the job of a comics creator and a comics editor is to piss people off just enough so that they don't stop reading, but that they have to buy every issue to see what crazy, thing you're doing next. It's a fine line. But if people tend to take comics for granted if they think it's, going to just be, more, if they think it's just going to be a cool adventure or an interesting story. Unfortunately, very often they go, okay, well, there's nothing radically new happening there, so I'll save my money and I'll buy something else.
Sure.
So, our job is to make you part with the money and the time you're going to invest in the comic. And, and the way to often do that is to outrage people or to, get them excited and hopefully not to the point where they just where they stop buying, to the point where they got to know what zany thing is coming up next.
Sure. Did we? And I can't remember if we talked right when Hail Hydra was happening too. The Captain America.
I think we did, and that kind of blew over, didn't it? I mean,
exactly.
I don't even have any idea. I don't even know, how did that story? Did they resolve that story?
No, it's still going on, and I think again there's more explanation of why Cap is acting this way, and certainly his own moral compass. Even though he's been reprogrammed by the Red Skull and the Cosmic Cube, deep down he's still Captain America. So even though he's doing things that the Skull wants him to do, he does them in a way that doesn't quite satisfy the Skull, and obviously he's still managing to save lives and not kill people and do some good things. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was talking about. I guess, and has it bumped up sales? Have sales been good on it?
I haven't been paying attention. I don't get into the horse race. I'm sure they sell enough. And if they don't, then obviously, a book will either change creative hands in the case of something like Captain America, or if it's a title like Defenders or something like that, they'll cancel it for a while and bring it back in a few months or years. Yeah. Right. Well, and what I wanted to ask you about Ben Reill specifically, though, was just how did you see him different from Peter in terms of characterization?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, we're talking something that goes back over 20 years, but he was going to be somebody who was simultaneously more jaded and cynical, and yet more idealistic. Because he'd sort of. Right, he thought he was the clone, he was traveling the country, we had a whole plan for all these, untold adventures of Ben Reill. They did a couple of them, but they never went very far. So on the one hand, he'd be kind of bitter and jaded and maybe seen the seamier and uglier side of life and of people in his travels. By the same token, I think we thought he'd be so happy to be back as Spider-Man that he would, that there'd be a certain enthusiasm and naivete to him that would be a kind of a different take. I mean, we did have him, take down Venom in a much more direct way, as I recall, than Peter did. So to sort of show that he had that his time on the road had hardened him, but I think the way he was being portrayed, and I think the way at least in the early going, he would have been different than Peter. Was that appreciation of being Spider-Man? Because he'd lost it, and then now he's got it. Now he's got it back, and I think also kind of since Peter had gone off with Mary Jane to have their baby, whatever happened with that storyline, but so I think that was Ben was going to be somebody who had those contradictory but human characteristics of being, been there, done that, seen it all, and yet, oh boy, I get to be Spider-Man again.
Yeah, and that obviously does change him because, at times Peter deals with the burden of being Spider-Man. I mean, that's really the core of his complications and everything is the obligation to the power and responsibility thing. And whereas Ben might be like, yeah, I get to be who I am again.
Well, that's always the great. And I mean, I always credit to Tom DeFalco with this insight into Spider-Man, although I'm sure other people, whether they articulate it or not, have had it too. The idea that, for Spider-Man especially, although I think for superheroes in general, but for Spider-Man especially, right, there's the burden, there's the responsibility, there's the guilt, but it's also a lot of fun to be Spider-Man.
Sure.
I mean, that's so that Peter has multiple motivations for what he does, just like we all do. I mean, everything we do, right? We all construct kind of a narrative of our lives, and so, we look back and we sort of figure out, well, we did this, or because of that, but really that's sort of imposing, a kind of easy to digest narrative on our own lives, because that's what kind of keeps you from going crazy, I guess. But we all have multiple motivations and why we do or don't do things. That's part of that is kind of the classic definition of what a hero is. Which is or that thing that Robert McKee thing. The story guru. Who talks about how character is defined by how somebody acts under pressure. It's kind of everybody can talk about what they would do or what they believe or what they think is the right thing, but when you're in a high pressure situation, people are defined by how they act as much or more than by what they believe or what they think they would do. So I think so Peter. So Peter has all these motivations. I mean, I think ultimately he's motivated to do the right thing. But certainly, he also wants to go out and earn money as Peter to help Aunt May or to help whoever, wherever the continuity is at a given time. I mean,
sure.
He's earning money, but he's not earning money to buy a sports car. He's earning money to help somebody or further his education or do something. So I mean, Peter is ultimately the guy who, in a clutch situation, will do the right thing, even if he's pissed off, even if he feels, badly used, and if he does do something selfish or if not altruistically motivated, he'll usually do what he can to make up for it, which is again very human, right? Because
sure.
No matter how idealistic you are, you're going to have, different moods or different situations that make you feel like, the world owes you something, or, you want to get back at somebody. But Peter's our best, is everybody's best case scenario for themselves, that they do the right thing, or if they don't, then they go back and make up for it as much as possible. I mean, that's the whole art of Spider-Man is the death of Uncle Ben, which, you could make, one could argue that that's Peter's conscience working overtime to say that he feels responsible for Uncle Ben's death. I mean, he didn't pull the trigger, he didn't break into the house, but he did let the burglar go, so.
Sure.
Not sure how we got I'm not sure where we started.
No, that was good. And honestly, I an answer that I expected from a guy who put Superman on the couch in his book and everything. So that's that's kind of what I was hoping for. I don't know if you know, but really in this clone conspiracy story, Ben is the Jackal. Ben Reill is the Jackal, and
I did know that. Yeah.
Okay, and obviously then he has found a way to bring the dead back to life, and is like, "Don't you see, Peter? This is our chance to get Uncle Ben back," and that's fun to play with.
I should read that. So it's not some Miles Warren. So Miles Warren is still dead.
He is there, and I don't know exactly when he's going to show up, but I know there's a cover with him in the old Jackal outfit fighting Ben in the new Jackal outfit. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so something's going on. Well, there you go, exactly. And that's I wanted to ask you because I wonder as we all get older. Don't get me wrong; it's all relative. But no, is it fun still to read like Spider-Man comics or Marvel comics, or for you is it like I did my time? It's more like I always make the comparison of working at a hardware store and then coming home and diving into a pile of nails or something like that. It's like,
well, I mean, I think the analogy might be, and this is this actually is an experience I had in my own life, is working in a donut shop.
Yes.
Because at first you think, oh boy, free donuts, and then at a certain point you go, okay, I had enough donuts. You don't want to look at. I still. Am interested. I'm enough of a fanboy underneath that I'm interested in the characters and what happens to them. Although by the same token, I'm not rushing to read every issue right away. I may get them, months later at Marvel Unlimited, or just like read a synopsis in Wikipedia.
Sure.
It's more a matter of time than interest. I just sort of. Again, as we get older, and have more responsibilities, and hopefully more power, but that comes and goes. You just sort of have to prioritize. So I am interested. And so there's a core group of me and my old cronies who, when we, there's always some, email chain that goes around between me and my. Some of my former writers and artists, where we go, boy, I guess the clone wasn't so bad after all. Right? Look at that, they brought him back for the 500th time.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm when I see the, I certainly see the Marvel movies and TV shows. My motto is always, look, you work at a company for years and years, and there's always, it's a business, so there's always. Some corporate shenanigans going on, but my motto is Peter Parker never did anything bad to me. That's,
there you go. I understand. While you mentioned the TV shows and movies, what'd you think this year? What'd you think of Luke Cage? What'd you think of Doctor Strange?
Like Luke Cage a lot. I've seen the first 6. I kind of am looking for a block of time when I can watch a second. I liked it a lot. I thought they. Really kind of are thinking outside the box. They just came up with a whole different way to do the heroes. I really dug Doctor Strange. It's kind of interesting the way they tied him into the whole rest of the universe, and it was I thought it was a good take on the character.
Sure.
Pretty reasonably true to what Stan and Steve did at the beginning. There's even some DeMatteis stuff in there. There's 100. What they do best is they synthesize all the different versions of the characters, and they sort of are usually able to come up with something that has the directness and simplicity of the original character, but is not afraid to use some of the more complicated character, villains and storylines, and I loved Stan's cameo. I thought that was, I didn't realize actually till I read about it online that he was actually reading Aldous Huxley's The Gates of the Gates of Perception. What's it called?
Doors of Perception.
Doors of Perception. Yeah, that's what Stan is reading on the bus.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And that's what he says. That's exactly what Stan says. That's hilarious, So I think you sort of have to know that there were I think various incarnations of Doctor Strange that used that book,
Sure.
referenced that book. So it's but it was very just. And Stan just seems to be having a great time doing that cameo,
Oh, yeah.
as he pretty much always does.
And Civil War, what'd you think of Civil War?
The Captain America, that came out this year.
Honestly, I forgot too. Right, at first, as soon as I said Doctor Strange, I kind of did a mental check, and I'm like, oh yeah, Civil War too. I got to ask him about Civil War.
I must have known the year. I enjoyed Civil War. Let's face it. Any time superheroes battle each other, it's always got a certain amount of contrivance to it. Because
there you okay.
I mean, even the best superhero. It's just one of the, because everybody loves to see the superheroes fighting each other.
Sure.
But it's always a misunderstanding. Even when I was 12 years old, I went, well, this is kind of contrived, but it's fun. So
sure.
So so the idea that they couldn't talk things out and that they, you sort of, that's really where the suspension of disbelief comes in. At least I thought they handled. I thought they handled it better than Superman versus Batman, where
clearly,
where they really, both their disagreement and their ultimate together seemed kind of like a reach.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I thought at least they kind of built it up a little more credibly. But once if you buy into it, then I thought Civil War was a lot of fun, and especially the stuff with Ant-Man and Giant Man. That was,
yes.
I have to say, somehow I'd managed to not know about that. I mean, I saw it. I don't know if I saw it the day it opened. I saw it fairly quickly, but that's the kind of thing that usually somebody in a review is gonna, or just in like a random Facebook posting is going to give away, and somehow I didn't know that.
Sure.
So, they really, the people working on the cinematic and the TV universes have really, I've been enjoying the Ghost Rider storyline.
Yes,
in
I was going to ask.
I'm not fully up to date on that, but and I was kind of losing interest in Shield. But the Ghost Rider, somehow they it seems to be back on track.
I would agree.
I think is there anything? Yeah, I've seen the trailer for the new Spider-Man, but I haven't heard. I just heard it silently. I had to have the sound off when I saw it. So I haven't. It looks good. Excuse me, but I don't know what the what the dialogue is like.
You want to grab water?
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Attaboy. Yeah, take a second. That's okay.
Yeah. All right, now I'm back in business.
There you go. I saw the trailer with sound. I liked it. I think I think the kid's good. I buy him as Peter, and I think it's going to be fun.
And it's smart to have a kid too, because if it is successful, in 10 years he won't seem like he's pushing 50 or something.
True. Yes.
So 10 years then he'll be in his 20s, or I think I guess Tobey Maguire didn't want to. I don't know what the actual story was, but Tobey Maguire did 3, and then he was out, and then Andrew Garfield did 2, and then for whatever reason, but he seemed like a pretty old Peter Parker for that, for the high school version of him.
Agreed.
So so if you start out with somebody who's a kid, then then he won't look so out of place, in movie number 4.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting how they move forward, and now Sony working with Marvel movies even more to kind of tie them together and everything. It's an interesting move, because I got to be honest, I had no problem with Andrew Garfield's portrayal of Spider-Man, other than
I liked
slightly
it.
older.
It was fine, yeah.
But the stories, the stories were kind of flat. I thought.
They were kind of by the numbers. I guess the Rhino maybe wasn't the best Rhino I ever. I ever saw. I guess, although let's face it, a character who's a human Rhino is sort of a goofy. It's a hard translation from a comic book to the screen. So I guess the only ones that are still not in the Marvel bullpen, as it were, is the X-Men franchise. Right, that's still on its own.
Yeah, that and Fantastic Four.
All right, Fantastic Four. Are they still not putting out a Fantastic Four comic? Is that still on hiatus?
Yeah, it's so weird. Reed and Sue are off camera, and the thing is with the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is interesting. and Johnny is with the Inhumans.
Now, are they bringing back Darkhawk? Somebody told me that Darkhawk was coming back.
I don't. That's so funny. I don't know. I haven't. If they are, I haven't heard that rumor.
Or at least maybe in the Guardians. I think there's somehow a hint that he was going to be in the Guardians 2 movie.
Oh, that's interesting, and that would be fun.
Somebody asked me about that. But
I have no idea. That's fantastic. That's great. I hadn't heard that, and I much like you were saying, I try to stay away from all the pre-press stuff because I really do want to go to the movie and just enjoy it. I mean, God, we're days away from Rogue One as we're recording this, and right. If I see a headline, I don't go to the story because I don't want to know.
Right.
So
I don't mind knowing the story, but it's always more fun if you don't know it.
Right.
So that's right, Rogue One. And what's the next Marvel thing coming up? Is that?
That's a good question. I think Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, and that's going to be in the spring?
I think so. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
I know the Spider-Man is July 17th. That's 7/17.
Right.
17.
Yeah,
right?
while we're talking, I will look it up, but I believe that I'm pretty sure Thor is the next one, and Guardians 2 is this summer, right?
Yep.
Let's see here.
And there's Thor, and is there another Captain America?
Oh, wow. Actually, Thor is after Spider-Man Homecoming. It's next November.
Okay, so nothing's... What's in the spring?
That's a good question. Let's see. We'll look it up while we're talking. As I'm looking it up, are you watching any of the DC TV?
I'm way behind on that stuff, I got to admit. I think I haven't seen it since they did the Flash of Two Worlds homage. So
okay,
but I've heard nothing but good stuff about it.
Yeah, I like all 4 shows. I really do. And Supergirl's only gotten better.
Right,
and I like the first season fine. Here we go. Here's the Marvel list. Guardians is actually first, May of 2017. Then
right,
Spider-Man.
They said something in May. Right. Okay.
And Thor. So those are the 3 this year. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Spider-Man Homecoming in July, and Thor in November.
And then what about TV? What are they? They must have more TV stuff.
Yeah, the next Spider-Man thing is Iron Fist is starting in March.
The next Netflix. Okay.
Yeah. And then I don't know. I don't know what's in development to get a second show. Man, I kind of hope Haley Atwell's show post Agent Carter didn't work out, and I keep and with Jeff Mace being in S.H.I.E.L.D., I loved how they retconned Jeff, and really it started, I guess, in the 70s in What If, but that Jeff Mace was a post World War II Captain America, and I think it would really be fun to see, even if they could make like a 2-hour movie of Jeff Mace trying to be a non-superpowered Captain America, or doing the best he can. And Haley Atwell trying to help him and stuff as Agent Carter.
Look, I had a big crush on her as Agent Carter. So,
God,
yeah. That was
yeah, she really is terrific.
Again, what they do is they get, actual serious actors to be in these movies, and serious screenwriters and serious directors. So, that's, there's a certain, I think, almost all the modern Marvel and DC. I mean, look, everybody, gave a hard time to Superman versus Batman, but 20 years ago we would have been thrilled that it existed at all.
Right. You're absolutely right.
So now we have this luxury of being able to nitpick that, that it didn't quite work dramatically as well as we would have liked it to, or that their mothers' names were both Martha,
Exactly. Yeah, but also, don't you think that there's been an evolution of sophistication in acting and sophisticating in writing that I do think it's kind of fair to say, well, let's not regress. Let's. Right. Everyone should kind of be paying attention. It's like, the superhero film is like the Western in terms of, you can the Western really from its start to, the end of its prime really did go through some interesting evolutions. And I mean, by the 50s, you had more psychological Westerns and character motivations. And I think you could say the same thing about superhero movies.
Well, the Western, became... It had a bunch of subgenres. You'd have, the Western noir, the Western romance, the Western comedy. So I think, I guess the superheroes. I mean, it's interesting. For so many years, especially before the indie movement in comics. But I guess the ones that with the exception of, say, the Raina Telgemeyers and the Art Spiegelmans, I guess the comics most people know are still the superheroes. So I think there's still subgenres within that too, where something will be, funny, and something will be family, and something will be a coming of age, and something will be a fish out of water. But I think that started happening, I guess, when superheroes, for whatever reasons, became the dominant genre, in comics. I don't know if comics are so diverse now. Maybe total sales are still with superheroes, but certainly, say Raina Telgemeier outsells anybody in any genre. And half the people I mention her name don't know who she is. You know who she is?
No, I don't. You say shame on me.
There you go.
Shame
Raina Telgemeier. She does graphic novels for Scholastic that are bought by kids and in schools. Smile, and that's her one about a teenage girl getting braces, and she has one about ghosts that just came out.
Cool.
She sells literally millions of copies.
Oh,
of her
sure.
So it is very funny that you, who I know is somebody who keeps up with everything,
who tries to.
Yeah, well, but Raina, for like the past 5 years or more, has been the top-selling graphic novelist in the country.
Just like Jeff Smith was with Bone and everything, and how Bone was such a scholastic phenomenon.
Right. So we tend to look at it from a very superhero-centric point of view, and
Sure.
I don't know if you call it Raina. It's not really a genre, but it's she has a characteristic style and things she's interested in. But in the superhero world, certainly, now in the movies, like in the comics for so many years, right? There are subgenres. So Doctor Strange will be more about, obviously about magical and philosophical stuff. Thor is kind of, again,
mythology,
mythological fantasy. Iron Man is tech and espionage. S.H.I.E.L.D. is obviously espionage, too. But it's I have to say, I'm not wishing it, but I'm certainly curious how long the superhero bubble will last. I mean, the westerns had a good run.
Well, yeah, that's my answer when people are like kind of concerned about, are we reaching the saturation point? And I'm like, well, how'd the western do? I'm like, we had a good 70 years. We had a good 70 years of consistent westerns until they really and still continue to post 70 years, but just not as often,
Right. Well, superheroes are probably the modern equivalent of the western.
Yeah.
They're sort of, a lot of, sort of about the, sort of a metaphorical version of history that, that America tells itself and shares with the world. And, the Western hero, like the private eye hero, and like the superhero, they're essentially about somebody, picked by fate to have special responsibilities and special skills I think people see themselves in that, and for whatever reasons, right now the superhero has supplanted the Western, the cowboy, which it's interesting that fantasy is so ubiquitous now, that so many people identify and have for so long with the superhero. Whereas of course, again, 25 years ago, there were, you'd have a one shot like the first Superman movie or the first Batman movie, but they really, they were, entities unto themselves. They weren't the harbingers of a whole wave of similar franchises, but beyond franchise, just the idea that you're not going to a science fiction movie, which is kind of a general term. You're going to a superhero movie, which, even though superheroes are in some ways just a subgenre of science fiction, but
sure,
but it's grown to become its own big thing, so that
right.
to the point where you have, the New York Times critics, having, there's articles that are just transcriptions of the various New York Times critics talking about superheroes, right? And always predicting, at least 2 out of 3 of them will always predict that the genre will be dead within a year.
Yes, this is it. They went too far. There's too much product.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. No, exactly. Well, and like you were saying about subgenres too. Ant-Man is the superhero comedy.
Right.
I don't know. Well, and I guess really the only superhero romance that I've really seen was really the first Daredevil movie, I suppose, with Affleck and Jennifer Garner.
Nothing else. Well, they sort of hinted at it with the Ant-Man, right? And I know what you're saying. There's romance in all of them, but the one that was primarily a romance. That's interesting. Huh. That's the
See,
next
another
thing.
book. There you go, Dan.
Somebody should do that. That's it.
Well, it's an interesting time, and honestly, I really do think the last 17 years, if you start with 99 with the X-Men franchise getting started and stuff, I think that you can maybe point to that, or even earlier, Blade.
I think Blade. I think you have to start with Blade. Yeah. So it's coming up on 19 years. No, it's
20. I think, I think, was it Blade 97? I'm going to look it up again.
I think it was 98. Pretty sure it was 98.
Probably right. Blade
I don't know what there was in 97. It must have been.
Well, I know the
Blade is the first one where Marvel really took control of their product, that they didn't just license it out, and where it had the trappings of a superhero and took itself seriously.
Yes, 98. You are absolutely
98.
Right. Absolutely.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, well, 97 we had things like Steel.
Right.
The Shaq as John Henry. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
I guess. Yeah, I guess in terms of he fit the suit, it's like the Brady Bunch with Johnny Bravo. He fit the suit, man. Too funny.
Right, and it was sort of a way of having Superman without it being Superman. I don't know why they would do that.
Well, exactly. Well, why do you kill Superman at the end of Batman versus Superman, the first movie? I don't.
And then tease that he's alive.
Yes.
And,
what do you think of Suicide Squad? That's the one that fascinates me, because I'm with the critics in terms of, man, that was a mess, and yet it really kind of refused to go away at the end of the summer and the beginning of the fall, and it kind of I think at the end of the day it did become a profitable movie.
Well, I think it did 2 things. I mean, I think it had a bunch of cool characters. I mean, the Jared Leto was an interesting take, and Harley Quinn, and there were a bunch of interesting characters. And I think it's funny. There's since I came up with this theory, of course, I've read that there's a name for it, and that which I forget. But the idea that even if a movie isn't that good, if the last 10 minutes are good, people come out of it,
sure,
telling themselves they had a good time. So even, that's, whereas if a movie is really good, but then the last 10 minutes are not, people will come out of it thinking that it wasn't that good. So, so that's an interesting human phenomenon. If you come out of a movie feeling good and excited, and that they pulled something interesting off in the last 10 minutes, it can really affect word of mouth and just general feeling about a movie. So I think Suicide Squad had that. I don't even remember what the last 10 minutes were, but I think they were. Because that movie was very. For me anyway, I found it just a lot of kind of noise and kind of senseless. Because obviously, by definition, these movies have a lot of stuff that blows up and a lot of
true.
Fighting. But this seemed to me just to have less. It seemed to make less sense and be just sort of. I went to see it for free. A friend of mine brought me to a press screening. So
cool.
So I can't complain that I wasted any money on it. But it was not
$15.
And look, I love those characters. Like everybody else does. So I'm rooting for them. It's certainly. I mean, even if I, maybe more a Marvel guy, I'm a superhero guy. Among other interests, I'd like them all. I'd love to see. A really satisfying Superman, right? Who?
Yes.
Look, the closest we may come is Spider-Man, right? Or maybe Thor. Some cross between Thor and Spider-Man.
That's funny. The 2 episodes of Supergirl this year that had Superman made me confident that if you put the character in the right hands, it'll be fine. Because and they even did the same thing last year when he was never on camera and would have things like a text conversation with Supergirl.
Right.
And it's like, there's the character. There he is.
I gotta catch up. I gotta watch those. Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, those two episodes were really self-contained and a lot of fun. And yeah, that guy, I wasn't, when I saw him, we always have those preconceived notions when we see somebody before, we'll see photos before you actually see the episode. I'm like,
right.
I don't know, he looks small and I'm not really sure. And then he you see the full performance and it's like, oh no, this guy was great. And they wrote it perfect. And it was fun, and I smiled, for 2 hours watching them. They just reran them last Monday.
Maybe I'll even watch them tonight. That might be, if I can figure out how to get the on demand on my TV.
I understand.
I'll be doing that.
So it could happen.
What else?
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I wanted to. Well, like I said, while 2016 is winding down, I wanted to kind of go over some things. I've been doing that with a lot of the guests. Lately is just kind of getting their opinions of
that makes sense.
The stuff we saw this year and what we thought of it and everything. But now moving forward to 2017, one thing I want to talk about is you've been involved with this from the start, and that's Will Eisner Week.
Right. Will Eisner Week. Will Eisner was one of the founders of comics as an art form and as a business, and he of course, did a character called the Spirit in the 40s and 50s that appeared as a newspaper supplement. There was a movie a couple of years ago that that was controversial, let's say, and it's
that's kind
and it's and the character, but it was great that somebody wanted to make a Spirit movie, and I think Frank Miller's heart was in the right place.
Yes.
I think it was a noble effort, but in any case, so Eisner created the Spirit, which was a groundbreaking comic character. He was involved in creating Black Hawk and
Uncle Sam.
A lot of
Uncle Sam, am I right?
Uncle Sam, right, exactly.
A lot of those quality heroes, or several of the quality heroes had Will Eisner's fingerprints on them.
Maybe the Blue Beetle, Sheena, Queen of the Jungle.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yes. That was Will. But he signed it with a different name. It was signed by W. Spencer Steele, something like that. But that was a Will Eisner creation.
Cool.
Hawks of the Sea.
Yes.
No, but the Spirit is the most well known. Then he spent about 25 years working on a magazine called PS Magazine, which was a kind of a instructional book for the military. And then of course he came back in the 70s with something called The Contract with God, which. Mm-hmm. Wasn't the first, and we'll never know what the first graphic, there's a lot of contenders for first graphic novel, but
sure.
Certainly Contract with God and Will Eisner popularized the notion of a graphic novel, that a comic book could have serious content intended for adults, not adult in the sense of, of erotic material, but adult in the sense of with mature themes and subject matter, very often about Will's own past growing up in New York and Brooklyn and the Bronx of the 20s, 30s, 40s. And Eisner spent the last 25 or 30 years of his life putting out pretty much one or two new graphic novels a year.
Yeah.
The Eisner Awards at the San Diego Comic-Con were named after Will. He was a great evangelist for comics, spreading the word about comics' potential to be serious literature and serious art. He wrote, he taught at School of Visual Arts and wrote several how-to books, comics and sequential art among them. So he had a remarkable career, and I work now with the Will and Ann Eisner Foundation and Will Eisner Studio. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink here.
Sure. I just did the same.
Right. So I'm working... I'm the chair of what's called Will Eisner Week, which is a worldwide celebration of Eisner and graphic novels. And we have events last year we had events in around 75 cities.
Wow.
And this year, so Will Eisner Week is going to be, it's officially March 1st through 7th, because Will's birthday would have been March 6th. You know, he died in 2005, but this coming year he would have been his 100th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking to make Will Eisner Week very special this year. And what that entails is we enlist people to put on events in their own local area, at a library, at a comic book shop, at a bookstore, at a college, somewhere you can find a space and put on an event specifically about Will, or possibly just about some graphic novel topic that you would brand as Will Eisner Week. This coming year is not only Will's 100th, but later in the year is what would have been Jack Kirby's 100th birthday. So some people are doing like joint celebrations of the two of them. So if you would like to do something in your area, go to WillEisnerWeek.com. That's the way it sounds, WillEisnerWeek.com. And you can find out more information. You can get a playbook that suggests things you can do. And we will then be more than happy to promote your event on the website. And there's a couple of Eisner documentaries that we can send you copies of to show if you want to do an event involving that. So that's Will Eisner Week. And as I say, it's very exciting with the 100th anniversary coming up.
That's awesome. Had you ever, I know you knew Will, but had you ever had a chance to interview him for your magazine Right Now?
As a matter of fact, I did. Yeah, back, it was just about 2 years before he died, in 2003, I did an interview with him that was focused on writing.
Sure.
Of course, with Will, writing and art were pretty interrelated. And again, when you have a Will Eisner on the phone, you talk about a lot of stuff. But that was in Right Now 5. It was reprinted in the Best of Right Now. It was reprinted in a book called Conversations with Will Eisner that Professor Thomas Inge edited. So it was funny because I'd known Will a little. He gave me a blurb for Superman on the Couch, which was very nice of him, because he wasn't the world's biggest superhero fan, but he gave me a very nice blurb for it. And I knew him from working through Byron Price when I worked for Byron.
Okay.
And we did some stuff with Will. We did the Spirit screensaver. But Will.
That's awesome, by the way.
I know. It was. If you can find the media to play it on, you can still get it on. I'm sure on eBay and stuff.
CD-ROM or whatever. That's fantastic.
Yeah, CD-ROM. It goes back to technology from like 1995, 96.
Sure.
But it's unique. It's unique. Very short interviews. It's like 20 different short interviews with Will. He introduces like 20 or 30 different spirit stories, maybe even more. So the interview, my challenge was, could I ask this guy even one question he's never been asked before?
Sure.
He actually did say these are good questions. So
that's great.
Whether he was just being polite or not, I don't know. I'll choose to think that he wasn't just being polite, and that he really did think they were good questions. But it was a thrill to interview the guy, and he was, what I found amazing, and of course everybody found amazing with Will, was that he wasn't a nostalgia act. He was kept himself informed on everything that was going on, in comics and graphic novels, but in other media as well. So there was, certainly he was very intrigued about the internet and the possibilities for storytelling digitally. So he wasn't, not that there's anything wrong with, with an old timer who talks about their past triumphs. I mean, that's very interesting too. But
sure.
But Will would talk about that. But Will was really more interested in the present and even more interested in the future and what was coming up, and and where society was going, and where comics were going, and where storytelling was going. And so it was, that really made him, I think, pretty unique. Stan Lee is like that. Jules Feiffer,
yes,
who is 87, is I think just wrapping up a trilogy of graphic novels, and he's like a house on fire. He's incredibly
yes.
productive, and Pfeiffer, of course, studied, worked for and studied with Eisner back in the Spirit days. Pfeiffer, I guess, apprenticed himself or was hired by by Will. So it's sort of nice to see that tradition being carried on. So that's Will Eisner Week. So again, if you're interested in either finding out what's an event near you, or if you want to put on an event, WillEisnerWeek.com.
That's awesome. I got the chance to see him speak at the University of Chicago one of the years they did the Humanities Festival about comics,
right.
And he was there with Scott McCloud, and Neil Gaiman interviewed Will at that event, and it was great because afterwards, and it really was this college atmosphere because it was in a large college auditorium, and then afterwards in the lobby of the auditorium, Neil and Will and Scott McCloud and others were all. I think Spiegelman was there actually as well. But yeah, everybody was pretty accessible, and you go up and talk to him. And I had him sign a couple of War and Spirit
great
magazines and stuff. And yeah, it couldn't have been cooler. And yeah, it was about 3 years before I started my podcast. And he was great.
I recently, I looked for it. I was able to find a copy of an event that took place 20 years ago on Will's 80th birthday. It was an event at Cooper Union in New York with Eisner, Spiegelman, and Pfeiffer.
Wow.
And I'm hoping to have that available. There's a project that I'm working on with the Eisner folks that I don't want to talk too much about, but hopefully within the next year or two we'll have that out and include a transcript of that evening.
That's great. I love John Cook's Eisner documentary.
That's a great documentary.
Yeah,
John and Andy, the brothers Cook.
Oh, okay, there you go. And the for me, and I know they've there was the Shop Talk articles that were in the back of the Spirit comic when it was Kitchen Press.
This is related to that. This is related to Shop Talk.
Oh, great, because those audio interviews that Will did with Jack Kirby and Phil Suling and all of everybody that he did that were included on the Cook DVD or Blu-ray. Oh my God, those are just fantastic. I love them.
We hope to have one also with Will and Stan Lee.
Oh, that's great.
That's appeared in other formats. That we're going to try to run a transcript of.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah.
A bunch of different things have to come together. In terms of just dollars and cents and publishing plans. But that is something that's in the works. I guess this is the point. Is this where I plug stuff?
If you want to, certainly. Yeah, man. I want to.
Why? I've just signed a deal to write a biography of Stan Lee, which will be really the first full biography of Stan ever done. There have been, similar books. There was a Spurgeon and Raphael's book about 10 or 12 years ago. Stan's done a couple of memoirs, but no one's ever done a full-on biography of Stan. So I've signed a contract with the division of Macmillan Publishing to do a biography of Stan. I've already started interviewing some people for it. I spoke to Al Jaffe and Joe Sinnott. I have some others lined up, and of course I have a list of 100 different people I want to talk to. And hoping this will be out somewhere in 2018. But of course, you never know with publishing. But
understood. Yes.
That's it's very it's exciting, and it's again, talk about great responsibility. You want to get it right and
absolutely
and be fair to everybody involved. So but it's and of course a story about Stan Lee is a story about the history of comics and in a way the history of his life and times. So it's it's exciting, it's challenging, it's a little scary, and but that's a very big thing happening. And then I'm back, or I'm still working with Wizard doing. I'm programming and moderating a slate of panels at their shows, and so check wizardworld.com for that. But the other thing to check Wizard World for is I'm working with Howard Chaykin. Howard is doing 2-day seminars in conjunction with Wizard and possibly with other conventions or institutions. But right now, coming up at the Wizard at the Wizard New Orleans show, which is early January. It's January.
You can look it up while
the
we're
convention
talking.
Is January 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay.
On the 5th and the 6th. So on the night of the 5th and on the afternoon of the 6th, right before the convention for 4 hours each day. There will be a seminar that Howard, or a workshop Howard's given, called, wait, let me find it, and I will, it is called Graphic Design in the Service of Narrative, a 2-day workshop with Howard Chaykin. So you can find out more about that. You can email me if you want, Danny@DannyFingeroth.com. Once again, Danny@DannyFingeroth.com. But you can also go to the Wizard World New Orleans page. That's if you go to just wizardworld.com, you'll see links to the New Orleans, and then when you see Howard's picture underneath it, it will say take a course with Howard Chaykin, and click on that, and that'll give you the information and the pricing. It's 2 days with Howard, who, if you've seen him at all or know his work, you know he is quite intense, to say the least, and quite brilliant, and
yes.
Exceptionally creative. So it's your chance to learn with Howard. It's not cheap. On the other hand, how often you get a chance to spend 2 intensive days? Plus, Howard will also critique your work for 2 weeks after the class ends by email.
Wow.
So he'll there'll be lectures, discussion, questions and answering. Howard will, then go through. It's a maximum of 15 people, so he will give everybody individual attention, and you have the bonus 2 weeks to send him anything for him to comment on after that. So go to wizardworld.com, get a link to their New Orleans show. You'll see search by city, and then when you see Howard's picture, you'll see underneath there'll be a link to how to information about how to sign up and more information about it. So I think those are the main things. I'm sure I'm forgetting half a dozen things. Those are the main things I got coming up.
Those are the things you mentioned to me. So I
right. As far as I know, there's nothing involving clones, but you never know.
Honestly, the thing is, I would say that this is kind of akin. We mentioned Robert McKee's story earlier. I mean, to really learn at the feet of Howard Chaykin is something special. And I mean, really, this is a guy who was so innovative when he broke onto the scene, and just the way he does compose pages, and I'm sure his insight into making a compelling page and stuff is really essential learning. And I do think if you got the bucks, it's certainly going to be, I think, worth your while. And I know he does chalk talks at Marvel.
He does chalk talks. Well, this is an expanded version of his chalk talk that he does at Marvel. So this is what he teaches professionals.
Sure.
But again, you can sort of. When we've given in the past, a lot of people who were into design, who were not necessarily artists as much as designers, came to it because they wanted to learn about design from him, honestly, it's entertaining and informative, and and let's face it, there's going to be some gossip that you might not hear anywhere else. So even if you don't have the intention of the holidays are coming up. This is a perfect gift for yourself or for somebody who's really into comics or aspires to be a comics professional or just wants to know more. I would just say it's a lot of fun no matter what, and obviously if you want to be an artist or a designer or a writer or an editor, it applies to any and all facets of comics. And the stuff, there's much stuff is covered, and I'm there kind of kibitzing and playing straight man to Howard and so on. I'd say it's limited to 15 people, so you're guaranteed of getting pretty individual and personal attention from him, whether you want it or not.
That's cool. I gotta ask, but I know you've been working. How long have you been working with the Wizard people now?
That's 3.5. That's over 3 years, close to 4.
Okay, and I know this is the new regime, and I know that they've been in the news lately with the old regime and some remnants of the old regime and some things back and forth. But clearly, you've been working with them for a while, so I imagine you've got a good opinion. I want to give the other side a chance to kind of to say the good things about the Wizard show.
Look, I'm a consultant. I'm not on staff. I'm not privy to what goes on. But it's a business like any other, and stuff happens.
Okay.
as far as fans, I mean, my experience with them is that they deliver what they promise. I think they're, and again, this is pretty much as an informed opinion as anybody else. I think they are evolving and growing, and there are different growing pains involved with that. But I think they put on, a very good show. They have a lot of cool celebrities and comic people, and they have been very supportive of what I do. As far as my panels, if you look at the Wizard programming schedule, you can see the panels I do range from super mainstream to kind of esoteric.
Yes,
and that's, they are very interested in doing interesting panels. That's why, they hired me on in the first place, and their commitment to that is as strong as ever. So, I say if you're a person who goes to conventions, come to the shows, and hopefully you'll have a more than a pleasant, you'll have a great experience, and don't forget to go to the panels.
Yes.
A lot of thought goes in at most conventions, but I can tell you from firsthand, a lot of thought goes into the subject of the panels and the panelists and the questions and the everything involving the panels. I try to make mine special and memorable experiences for people, and I think everybody else does too. So just whether at Wizard or any show, don't forget about panels. And even if through like an accident of real estate, the panels end up being a long walk from the main floor, it's worth the walk.
I agree.
So again, certainly for the panels I do, I try to make it, worth everybody's time. Including both the people on the panel and the and the audience. So
sure.
they're mostly, I'd say 95% of the panels are included with your admission to the show. I mean, there may be some that have some special thing involved, but most of them are free in the sense that once you pay your admission, you can go to them. I'll also be at the Big Apple show in March in New York, which is not a Wizard show, but I'll be doing some panels there and everything.
Oh, that's great.
So it's March 11th and 12th, and I believe Howard's going to be at that show too.
Oh, very cool.
I don't know if we're doing the workshop for that, but the only one I know for sure is the one at the Wizard show in New Orleans. Just don't let other people make your opinion for you. Kind of do your reading and show up to have a good time. We're there so you have a good time, and anything else is just sort of one of the downsides of the internet age that that now you get to know every single blip that goes on in a company's life. 20 years ago you wouldn't know it. And
that's true. That's very true.
It wouldn't matter. So take it with a grain of salt.
I'll say honestly, because I've seen the difference since you started doing the programming, because there was a time that I think Wizard did do incredible shows when I first started going to shows in the early 2000s, and there was this little period where they kind of had lost their way, and I think truly, since you have come on, they've regained what makes panels fun and interesting. I'm a huge believer in those panels, and I do think that the conventions owe that kind of programming to the attendees, because these tickets aren't cheap. And even just
right.
Well, they're not. And as far as admission goes, so they people should get something just for walking in the door beyond getting the chance to get their comic book signed or get a sketch. It's nice that they do provide some programming, and also programming that is entertaining and truly.
Right. Well,
I've had this conversation with our mutual friend Dean Haspiel, and I mean it. No, since you've taken over and stuff, I think the panels have improved at Wizard shows. Definitely.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, it's funny, right? If somebody said to you, you would do do a panel with Dean and Steve Geiger and three other artists, and it would cost you $15. You go, that seems like a good deal,
right?
So at a given day at a convention, again, specifically at a Wizard show, there's 10 panels like that.
Exactly.
So, you could, I've seen people, I think there are some people who do it maybe, I think it's the exception rather than the rule. But if you were, if somebody said, whatever the Wizard admission fee is, and I have to admit I don't know exactly what it is, but for whatever that day fee is, you would go to Comic Book College, and here are these 10 seminars you could go to. You go, that's a pretty good deal.
Yep.
So I mean, so that's what we try to provide, at the shows. So it's, like I said, I know many people go for the autograph and just to see it in the cosplay, but you really could go to Comic Book College and just like go to panels all day and learn how to and learn about history and just get inside glimpses into your into your favorite creators who if they're at the show. So it's it's all kind of relative, but thank you. I really appreciate you saying that.
Hey, man, I mean it, because honestly,
very, very means a lot.
Well, that is a big reason why I go to conventions. It's a big reason why I started the podcast, was to learn more about the history and get some insight in the business in terms of, just how it's changing. I mean, and this conversation is reflective of that, and I really appreciate your point of view, and I'm glad that you are happy to come back on. And this is kind of a casual. Oh, thank you, man. And this was a casual one. I'm going to pick your brain probably more a little bit more about comic history on the next conversation. But I wanted to. Good. And hey, maybe right before Will Eisner week or something, if there's if we want to promote some of the things that are happening in the various cities.
That would be perfect. That would be really great. Maybe in like mid-February or something. That would be mid-late February. That would be perfect.
There you go. Great to welcome back Danny Fingeroth to Word Balloon. And guess what? We're not done. 2016, still only a couple days left. Still have one more Word Balloon to share with you, and it's going to be a good one. Tom King joins us for a great conversation. What a 2016 Tom King has had. And man, so much tragedy, especially in these closing days. My thoughts go out to the family and fans of Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds and George Michael. Oof, man, what a week. So to brighten things up, we're going to talk to Tom King at the end of the week because whether it's been his great run on Batman, his excellent original story, Sheriff of Baghdad, and of course, Sheriff of Babylon, and of course, the absolutely incredible Vision maxi series. Great stuff from Tom King this year. We review it and talk about a lot more on the final Word Balloon for 2016, and that's going to be the next episode. So until then, Word Balloon has been sponsored by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Thank you again for your support. Word Balloon is also brought to you by InStockTrades.com, where here's some new releases from InStock Trades. You can get Avengers Endless Wartime trade paperback from Warren Ellis. It's now finally available in a trade paperback, just $10.99. You can get the Nighthawk trade paperback, Hate Makes Hate, the wonderful run from David Walker and Ramon Villalobos. That book is 45% off, just $9.89. You can get Secret Six Volume 2, The Gauntlet, with Gail Simone and Dale Eaglesham. And this is early in the run, 45% off, just $9.34. You can get Spider-Woman, trade paperback volume 2, Shifting Gears, coverage of her run on Civil War. Dennis Hopeless, Javier Rodriguez, 45% off, $8.79. You get Sandman Mystery Theater, one of my all-time favorite series from Vertigo, featuring Matt Wagner and Guy Davis. This is trade paperback book 2, 45% off, just $16.49. Check it all out for yourself. It's waiting for you at InStockTrades.com. Thanks again for listening. Stick around. Next episode coming up very soon, Tom King. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2016.